Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on our playlist, Dining with the Damned, where we discuss criminals sentenced to die, their crimes, their executions, and we eat their last meal. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin. Aileen Carol Pittman was born on February 29th in Rochester, Michigan. Her mother was only 16 years old when she was born, and her father was only 18. They divorced just before Aileen was born, and Wuornos never met her father, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia while incarcerated. He was released from prison and was then convicted of sex crimes against children and hanged himself in prison. In January of 1960, when Aileen was almost 4 years old, her mother Diane abandoned Aileen and her brother, leaving them with her parents, who were both alcoholics and who Aileen stated abused them both physically and sexually. Her grandparents adopted Aileen and her brother and changed their last names to Wuornos. In 1970, at age 14, Aileen became pregnant after one of these instances of abuse. She gave birth to a baby boy at a home for unwed mothers, and the baby was placed for adoption. That is a rough start to life. There's no doubt about that. Aileen returned to school after the baby was born, where she was treated terribly by the other kids. She was abused by boys in exchange for food and cigarettes and drugs, and bullied and teased by both boys and girls. When she was 15, her grandmother died of liver failure, and her grandfather threw her out of the house. She began living in the woods near her former home and working as a prostitute to survive. It's tough to make excuses for people who go on to do terrible things in their lives. But man, you talk about somebody that was doomed from day one. That's a terrible story. I walk that line, like I'm sure a lot of you do that are interested in true crime, between blaming circumstances for people's behavior and cutting them some slack, and then, thinking, well, it doesn't really matter, because a lot of people are treated badly and a lot of people have bad childhoods and they don't go on to murder a bunch of people. All those things are true. It's just a complicated situation. I go from being really angry at people like this to feeling really sorry for them, but I think I always go back to feeling sorry for their victims, probably more than I do for them. Aileen enters a period of her life where she kind of wanders, and this continues to some extent for the rest of her free life. She gets a DUI and a charge for disorderly conduct for firing a pistol from a car. She doesn't go to court, and so then she has a warrant out for failure to appear. In about 1976, she hitchhikes to Florida, and she meets a man much older than her named Louis Fell, and they marry very soon after meeting. Now, this man is a well-known member of his community and is actually the area yacht club president. The relationship is bad from the get-go. Aileen is constantly fighting in bars and even is known to beat Louis with his own cane, which eventually causes him to get a restraining order against her. After this short amount of time where she's already ruined this relationship, she goes back to Michigan, where she is again arrested for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. That is so not cool. I've spent a lot of time in bars in the bands that I perform in, and you don't throw cue balls at people's heads. Those things can do some major damage. Her brother died of cancer in this same year, and he leaves her $10,000. She uses it to buy a new car, which she wrecks just weeks later. She spends the next few years drinking heavily and living in different locations. She's arrested over and over for robbery, for passing forged checks, stealing guns, stealing cars, resisting arrest, just kind of every lower level crime you can commit. In 1986, Wuornos is back in Florida, and she meets a woman named Tyria Moore. Tyria works as a hotel maid, and the two of them meet in a local Daytona Beach lesbian bar. They quickly move in together, and Wuornos supports them both, working as a prostitute. They're both kind of aggressive and angry personalities. They're consistently detained by police for fighting in bars and disorderly conduct. It is during this time that Aileen's behavior takes a turn for the worst, and the crimes she commits cross the line into murder. Bodies of men start turning up in Central Florida. Police begin to link the murders together because of similarities in the cases. All the men are robbed, they're all shot, and they all have their cars stolen after their murders. I was 18 or 19 when we started hearing about these murders on the news. I had just gotten married. I got married really young. And I remember them saying that they thought it might be a woman that was committing the murders. And that was just unheard of at the time. It's still very rare. I think they say between 10 and 15% of serial killers are women. So it's very, very rare. And most of the women that do maybe serial kill more than one person, they do it with poisonings, or they do it through Munchausen syndrome, things like that. They don't go out and shoot strangers like this, so it's very, very rare. Richard Charles Mallory, aged 51, was found dead in Clearwater, Florida. Mallory was an electronics store owner, and he was also a convicted rapist. Wuornos maintained up until her death that she only killed Mallory in self-defense, and many people believe that to be true. He was known to be a violent man, and Aileen claims he brutally beat her and did other terrible things to her, and claims this is the reason that she killed him. His abandoned vehicle was found on December 1st, 1989, and then his body was found on December 13th in a wooded area. He had been shot several times, with 2 bullets to the left lung being the cause of death. It seems that this murder, whatever the reason, changed Aileen. And even if it was an act of self-defense, it almost feels like she got the taste for murder and that she liked it. Those of you who follow true crime like I do, you know that murderers will often talk about how they feel a sense of power after they kill someone. They talk about how they've always felt powerless. And when they murder, they feel powerful. That's a common thread. And I have always leaned towards believing that's what happened to Wuornos. David Andrew Spears, age 47, went missing in May of 1990. His naked body was found along U.S. Route 19 in Citrus County, Florida. He had been shot 6 times. Charles Edmund Carskadden, age 40, was found just weeks later in Pasco County. Witnesses saw Aileen driving his car, and she also pawned a gun that belonged to Carskadden. Peter Abraham Seams, age 65, disappeared around July 1990. Tyria Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning his car, and Wuornos' palm print was found on the interior door handle. Peter Seams' body was never found. Troy Eugene Burris, Charles Humphreys, and Walter Antonio all met the same fate: shot, killed, robbed, and left without their car. During the investigation, that palm print I mentioned that was found on Peter Seams' car was analyzed. Now, remember, this was years before the internet was readily available, and they didn't have CODIS or any sort of computer network. So when they checked fingerprints, it was literally detectives, police officers sitting in a room with magnifying glasses or, something to help them see and compare prints from a piece of paper. So it was a very long process. Wuornos' palm print was matched up to the fingerprints on file from her previous arrests. Aileen had an outstanding warrant, and the police used that to their advantage. Tyria Moore and Wuornos had split up at this point because they knew the police were looking for them. Aileen was picked up on January 9, 1991, at the Last Resort, a biker bar in Volusia County. Moore was arrested in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and agreed to confess in exchange for immunity from prosecution. So the police bring Moore back to Florida, and they put her up in a motel room, and they record her as she makes numerous calls to Wuornos in jail, pleading for Aileen to tell the police that she did not do the murders. Wuornos did seem to really love Tyria Moore, and after 3 days of her calling and saying she was in a lot of trouble, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed all the men had tried to attack her and that she killed them all in self-defense. Aileen Wuornos went on trial on January 14, 1992 for the murder of Richard Mallory. She was convicted on January 27th. Psychiatrists testified that she had borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. She was sentenced to death 4 days later. She then pleaded no contest to the murders of Humphreys, Burris, and Spears, claiming that she wanted to, quote, get right with God.
I have made peace with my Lord, and I have asked forgiveness. I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this, but I take full responsibility for my actions. It was them or me. I am sorry for all the pain that my actions have caused. I am prepared to die if you say it is necessary.
She was then given 3 more death sentences. She then pleaded guilty to the murder of Karskaden and received another death sentence. She was also tried and convicted for the murder of Antonio. No charges were ever brought against her for the murder of Seames, whose car was the vehicle that resulted in her identification because his body was never found. In preparing for this episode, I watched the movie Monster again. I hadn't seen it for a really long time. If you haven't seen that movie, watch it. Charlize Theron, Academy Award for it, great acting, total body transformation. She put on like 30 pounds for the role. It's a tough movie. It's not a fun movie. It's a sad movie. It's a dark movie, and it really shows you the way these women lived, and it was not a good life. During her incarceration, Wuornos told different versions of why she did what she did. Like I said, initially she claimed that all the murders were cases of self-defense, but she later said the motives were mainly robbery and not wanting to leave witnesses. She scored a 32 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist. Anyone who scores over 25 is considered a psychopath, so she met and far surpassed that. During an interview with filmmaker Nick Brookfield, when she thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row where she had been for 10 years and that she wanted to die. Wuornos was transferred to Florida State Prison for execution. Last-minute appeals were filed, and Wuornos issued a statement saying, quote, "I killed those men, robbed them cold as ice, and I'd do it again. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing that she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again." In 2002, she began accusing prison matrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She also complained about strip searches, tight handcuffing, mildew, and things of that nature. She gave a series of interviews before her execution claiming that she was a tortured person, that she was being poisoned and suffering other abuses. Her mood would go from calm and sad to angry in an instant, and her final words on camera were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." She became known for her explosive and bizarre behavior in court. She would be fine, calm 1 minute, and then just lose it the next minute. And that brings up the question, was she mentally ill? Was she competent? What are our definitions of mental illness? Because they seem to change from doctor to doctor and from time to time. And it's important that we talk about those things. Most of you are so supportive, and I love the feedback and the comments that we get. Even if it's constructive criticism, we love that here. Once in a while, we have people come that just want to be rude. And I don't get it. It's like, what's the point of that? I can't always say I've been 100% nice if someone's been rude to me on Facebook or something like that, somebody that I know or something like that. But just to come on here and tell me to get cancer and tell me to KILL myself, I don't understand that. We're trying to do something kind of positive here, and we're trying to talk about the connection that we all have and whether or not we should execute mentally ill people. What makes these people? How are they different from us? How are they the same as us? That's what we do here. If you don't like it, move along. It just is not that difficult. As I like to say, go in peace, but go. On October 9th, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was led to the execution chamber and strapped to a gurney. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back. I'll be back." The lethal injection was administered, and she was pronounced dead at 9:47 a.m. She was the 10th woman in the United States to be executed following the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. Her body was cremated and her ashes spread beneath a tree in Michigan by her childhood friend, Don Botkins. Wuornos requested that Natalie Merchant's song, Carnival, be played at her funeral. She was a big fan of Natalie Merchant's and had listened to the album Tiger Lily over and over while on death row. Ooh, it's always so creepy to me when I'm researching these cases and I find out I have something really specifically in common with a serial killer. I'm sure you guys have experienced that if you read and watch a lot of this kind of stuff. I'm a Natalie Merchant fan, and I actually got to share a stage with her once. I listened to Tiger Lily, I don't know how many hundreds of times. It's a fantastic album. And just to learn that you have something in common with someone like this, it's a little unsettling. Many books and TV shows and movies have been written about Aileen Wuornos, too many to name here. I mentioned the most famous of them, the movie Monster that earned Charlize Theron an Academy Award, and I'm sure many of you have seen Aileen Wuornos portrayed on the 5th season of American Horror Story, Hotel. Many songs have been written about the serial killer, including an entire opera based on her life called Wuornos. Another very interesting fact, and one that's kind of chilling, is that Aileen Wuornos and Ted Bundy have something very specific in common. Both Ted Bundy and Aileen Wuornos were raised by a woman who they thought was their mother, who was actually their grandmother. And they both were lied to, and they both found out as preteens that their grandmother was their grandmother and not their mother. I'm sorry, that is just a little too coincidental for me. That has to do something when you find out you've been lied to and betrayed by the people that aren't supposed to lie to you. It's just, I find that to be a little spooky. There are lots of opinions about Aileen Wuornos, whether she was a damaged person, whether she was mentally ill, whether she was just cold and evil to the core. Regardless of what your opinion is, it is an interesting and complicated case. So, what did serial killer Aileen Wuornos request for her last meal? I'm going to show you. This is what serial killer Aileen Wuornos requested for her last meal. A cup of coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. It doesn't agree with my stomach. And I find it really interesting because I just took one of those food sensitivity tests. I've recently been diagnosed with lupus after a couple years of really strange health problems. And the food sensitivity test came back to me being sensitive to coffee. So I find it interesting that our bodies try to tell us, don't eat this, it doesn't agree with you. The other thing that came back was garlic. And although I love eating garlic, I can't stand the smell of garlic, and I especially cannot stand to smell it on someone else. That garlic breath smell, I can't stand that smell. So I think it's interesting. I just thought I'd throw that out there. If you're having any kind of health issues or stomach problems, get one of those food sensitivity tests. They're like $150. My kids got mine for me for Christmas. You just prick your finger and do a couple drops of blood. I'm doing a commercial for them, and they're not even sponsoring me, hello, but they do really help. So anyway, I'm not really a coffee drinker, and I especially don't like black coffee. Nope. Now, if I can put a bunch of cream and sugar in it, a lot, like a lot, so it tastes more like coffee ice cream. Yeah, that's really good. But black, how do you guys do that? I love a cup of tea, any kind of tea. I love all tea, but coffee just doesn't do it for me. It's good with all that stuff in it, but she just ordered black coffee. Sorry, I couldn't do it. If I was going to be executed, I like to think about what I'd order. I'd order something really good, but I think I'd be too upset to eat. And the more of these episodes that I do, it seems like that's the case for some people. Some people, man, they can just chow down, and some people, it doesn't seem like they can eat, and it doesn't sound like she had any appetite. But yeah, it's really good with all the stuff in it. I don't know. Here we have another story of a person that had a really terrible life and ended up doing terrible things. But then we have a lot of people who have terrible lives that don't do terrible things. So this is why we talk about it. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Damned. We appreciate your support and your comments. The channel is growing, and that's because of you. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Stay safe, be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death.